There was a point in my life where I had a planner, a bullet journal, a whiteboard, sticky notes on my fridge, and a phone full of reminders. And I still felt completely lost. And I want to talk about why that is. Because I think what happened to me is happening to a lot of people. And once we name it, something starts to shift. I'm Christina Perry, and welcome back to another episode of Smile Sessions. This is the podcast where we discuss ways to live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. Okay, so in the last episode, if you listen to it, we talk about overwhelm, about decision fatigue, about nervous system exhaustion, about why everything can feel so heavy even when nothing catastrophic is happening. And I got messages after that, people saying things like, "This is exactly what I needed to hear," or "I didn't have words for this, and now I do." And that really stayed with me, because naming something is actually the beginning of changing the relationship. So today I want to take us a step further. I want to talk about what I started doing differently. Not a quick fix, and not 10 steps to a perfect morning routine. Something that actually started working for me, and why I think it works when so many other things didn't. Let me start with the thing I had to unlearn. I genuinely believed, for a long time, that if I just had more discipline, I could get on top of my life. Like there was some version of me that was going to wake up at 5 a.m., do an hour of deep work before anyone needed anything from her, and then move throughout the rest of the day with grace and intention. I spent so much energy chasing that version of myself. I really did. I read the books. I tried the systems. I went through phases of extreme structure. Like I'm talking color-coded everything, followed inevitably by total collapse. And then shame, and then rebuilding, and then collapse again. And at some point, I had to ask myself, if discipline were actually the answer, wouldn't it have worked by now? That question sat with me for a while. And what I started to understand, slowly and perfectly, was that the problem wasn't my motivation. The problem wasn't my work ethic. The problem was that I was trying to operate a system that wasn't designated for how my brain and body actually function under stress. Because here's the thing about rigid routines and strict schedules. They work beautifully when your life is stable, your energy is consistent, and nothing unexpected is happening. So basically never. For most people I know, and definitely for myself, life is not that. Life is a variable. Energy is a variable. Circumstances shift, and a system built for perfect conditions will fail the moment the conditions aren't perfect, which is constantly. So I started thinking about it differently. Instead of, how do I make myself do more things? I started asking, how do I reduce the number of decisions I have to make in a day? That shift sounds simple, but it genuinely changed things for me. Because when you reduce decisions, you free up mental bandwidth. And when you have more mental bandwidth, you have more capacity for the things that actually matter, for the things that have to get done. And honestly, just from being a person in the world without feeling like you're constantly running out of steam. I stopped trying to schedule every hour of my day and started thinking about it in chunks. What needs to happen in the morning? Not minute by minute. Just what's the shape of a morning that sets me up okay? And then what does my middle of the day need to look like? And then how do I want to transition into the evening? That sounds almost too simple, right? But that shift from scheduled time slots to general shape of things made such a difference for my nervous system. Because there's something about rigid schedules that set you up to fail the moment anything goes sideways. And when you fail that structure, it doesn't feel like your schedule broke. It feels like you broke. A flow is different. A flow says, here's the general direction that we're going to move in. We will make it work. And I want to talk about resets for a second, because I think this one was a big one for me. I used to wait until things were completely out of hand to address them. Like I would not reset my space or my routine until I was already drowning. And by that point, it felt like such a huge project that I couldn't even start, which meant I waited longer, which made it worse. Are you seeing the pattern? What started to help was the idea of a small daily reset, not a complete overhaul and not a deep clean. Just a moment, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 20, where I kind of gathered myself and my space back in. Closed the tabs both literally and metaphorically. And then a slightly bigger reset once a week. Not a massive purge, just a chance to look at the upcoming week, acknowledge what happened in the previous one, and make a few intentional choices about what I want to prioritize. These weren't systems I read about in a book. I kind of built them out of necessity because nothing else was working. And I didn't realize that at first, but I was building something. A way of moving through life that was actually designed around my nervous system, not against it. Here's the real-life example, embarrassingly relatable. I used to dread Sunday evenings, like genuinely dread them. Not because anything bad was happening, but just the anticipatory weight of the week starting. The sense that I hadn't done enough with the weekend, that the week was about to demand things of me I wasn't ready for. And I had no clear vision of what any of it was going to look like. And once I start doing even a little loose Sunday reset, not a full planning session, not building a detailed schedule, just taking 20 minutes to look at what was coming and make a few decisions in advance. The dread started to lift. Not completely, but definitely noticeably, because my brain was no longer walking into Monday blind. I had given it just enough information to feel a little safer. That's what these systems started doing for me. Not creating perfection, creating just enough safety that my nervous system could stop racing. And look, I'm not going to pretend I figured this all out cleanly or that it's always worked. There were weeks that I completely abandoned any sense of structure and sort of free fell through my days. There were periods that I built something that worked and let it fall apart, therefore having to rebuild it. But each time it came back to these ideas, the flows instead of a strict schedule and the small daily reset and weekly container. I came back a little faster, less harsh on myself for having slipped, because I started to understand that the goal was never perfection. It was the goal of having something to return to. That's it. Just having something to return to. I'll be honest with you. I'm a very reflective person, probably to a fault. Ask my friends. I'll sit with a feeling until I've mapped out its entire history and written it a birthday card. But that tendency also means that I spend a lot of time thinking about patterns and why things work and why they don't. And so what I noticed, the more I paid attention, was that when people, including myself, struggle with home and life management, it's almost never because they don't care or that they're disorganized at their core. It's usually the systems that they've been handed don't fit the life that they're living. A rigid morning routine designed for a person with no kids, no chronic health stuff, no emotional weight, and 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep is not going to work for most people. And when it doesn't work, we decide it's our fault. What if it's just the wrong system? I started thinking about what it would look like to build something around that idea. Something that didn't demand perfection. Something that gave people a gentle structure without shaming them when life interrupted it. Something to reduce decisions instead of adding them. Something that felt honestly like a sigh of relief rather than another thing to fail at. I didn't realize it at the time. I was building something I actually needed. And I'm not going to say much more about it today, but what I want you to sit with for a little while is this idea isn't the goal to do more, to be more organized, to try harder. The goal is to feel less overwhelmed. And those are not always the same path. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you exactly what I actually did with these ideas, where they went, what they became. But for now, I just want to say this. If you've been beating yourself up because your routines never stick, because your systems always fall apart, because you keep starting over, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just that you've been trying to make something work that was never built for you. There's another way. Until next time, I'm Christina Perry, and this has been another session for your soul.